Many believe, like the 1912 Titanic, the United States, the world's largest economy, is unsinkable. The next 9 minutes will change your mind. The numbers are simply shocking and originate from the United States Office of Management and Budget. My name is Hal Mason. I'm a retired accountant and was employed with IBM for 27 years. Last August, as Washington raised the debt ceiling, I decided to Google the United States debt and clicked on the President's budget for fiscal year 2012. What I saw floored me. I saw the United States sinking in massive debt and on an unsustainable path of borrowing to pay for itself. However, it wasn't the incredible growth of the debt that was most shocking. What stunned me was finding deficits so large that had the government shut itself down, it could not balance the budget. The information is upsetting, and there is no hint that Washington recognizes the catastrophe facing the United States. Watch, and you will sense the urgency that we must get involved in saving our nation. The information that follows is directly from the White House website shown. By selecting Mid-Session Review, you will be able to access page 28 and 53 that is referenced in the following slides. By selecting Historical Tables, you can find debt and deficit history used in this presentation. I encourage you to see for yourself what Washington is not talking about. The first revelation that Washington has the United States on an unsustainable path is Table 7.1, listing federal debt by year. The rate of increased debt is outrageous. It took the United States 220 years, from 1776 to 1996, to amass a debt of $5 trillion. It took only 12 years to add another $5 trillion, and just 3 years for the last $5 trillion. Now, it doesn't take a math genius to understand we are on a bullet train with Congress at the throttle, racing to bankruptcy. To help comprehend the magnitude of $15 trillion, we will use a $100 bill and see how large of a vault we will need to store $15 trillion. We will start with a standard bundle of 100 bills, or $10,000. Enough to purchase a used car. If we stack 100 of these standard bundles, we will have $1 million. The stack is only 6 inches high and will fit into a small vault. Washington borrows $1 million every 19 seconds, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and has since 1998. 100 million will fit on a standard pallet. It weighs 2,200 pounds. It takes 10 pallets to hold $1 billion, and the United States borrows 4 times this amount every day, 365 days a year. Now look at $1 trillion. It is 10,000 pallets, double stacked, covering more than a football field, and each pallet contains $100 million. It weighs approximately 22 million pounds. Notice the man with 1 million at his feet. He is barely visible. If you add 5 times, or 50,000 pallets to this picture, it represents the $5 trillion U.S. debt for the past 3 years. Now this is the 15 trillion on pallets in proportion to a football field, soccer field, and the 305-foot Statue of Liberty. This is 20% of the world's gross national product, and there are 165 million tons of $100 bills. It would take 6,600 commercial trucks to haul this to your vault. This is the United States debt as of 2011. But it does not include the $9 trillion of new debt, or the $5.5 trillion interest projected this decade by the United States Budget Office. This is what is sinking the United States and placing our nation in danger of default. Now let's assume the United States starts paying this debt at a rate of $100 per second. The debt will be totally paid in 4,726 years. And don't you wonder how much unpaid interest will accrue? Well, if the Feds can keep the inflation under control and hold the rate at 3%, interest will only be $450 billion this year. And I'll let you figure out the other 4,725 years. A summary of the United States budget is provided on page 28. It provides 12 years of budget data. It is formatted into 3 basic sections. First is outlays, which is what the federal government spends annually. The second section is receipts, representing all income received from taxes. And the third section is the deficit, which is the difference between the two. If we look at year 2011, Washington's spending was $3.6 trillion. However, Washington only collected $2.3 trillion in taxes, resulting in a deficit of $1.3 trillion, which is now part of the $15 trillion that Washington has borrowed. On page 53, the White House publishes what it borrows or finances as federal debt. Now, instead of reducing debt, Washington estimates $9 trillion new debt in the next 10 years. Looking at the bottom of the chart, total federal debt is reported. Washington estimates a debt of $16.1 trillion by the end of this year, which is realistic, knowing they have over $15 trillion today and just asked for a $1.2 trillion increase in the debt ceiling. Look at year 2021. Debt is estimated to exceed $24 trillion, meaning every taxpayer in the United States will owe a federal debt exceeding $214,000. Another shocking disclosure, Table 1.1, reveals that in 8 years, the United States went from a budget surplus in 2001 to an incredible $1.4 trillion deficit by 2009, followed by another $1.3 trillion deficit in 2010, and another staggering deficit in 2011. Now, in the next chart, let's look at the most shocking fact, what it takes to stop the deficits, something no one is talking about. This is what floored me, and no one in Washington is talking about it. Using White House budgets for the past 3 years, Washington could have ended the war, eliminated every branch of the military, eliminated every federal employee, eliminated every department, eliminated every discretionary expense, and Congress would still have a deficit. We can understand Congress's dilemma when I chart the 2011 tax revenues with the cost of Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, and other mandatory spending. Note that tax revenues were $2.314 trillion, and mandatory program spending for entitlements was $2.102 trillion. This leaves only $212 billion to fund the entire government. One can clearly see that all $1.3 trillion to operate the United States government must be financed as debt. There are no remaining tax revenues to pay the federal government. Discretionary spending is the federal government as we know it. It is the spending for the President, Congress, every branch of the military, every federal employee, NASA, as well as every federal department. It is everything except mandatory entitlements and interest. The entire federal government has been borrowed the past 3 years. The best way to foresee the catastrophe threatening America is to take an average American family that has proportional debt similar to the United States. We simply substitute the United States budget with a median family budget using the exact same proportions, and this is what it looks like. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates a median family income is around $52,000, and let's say they spend like Washington. Their expenses will exceed $81,000. Since spending is $30,000 more than their income, they must charge their credit cards, which have an outrageous balance of $334,682. Credit card debt has soared $112,000 in 3 years, and according to the family's budget, by 2021, like the United States, the credit card balance will surpass $530,000. However, the family has reached the limit on every credit card, and they're unable to borrow. Suddenly, they can no longer pay the car, mortgage, or credit card payment. Interest rates on their credit cards soar, driving expenses above $100,000. They have lost everything and face the stark reality of being homeless. Now this is the path Washington is taking our nation. The catastrophe will take place when China and other countries will no longer purchase our soaring debt. Unable to borrow or pay expenses, the United States will default. Now an obvious question, is the United States living within its means? Let's look at what the White House response is to this question. Now let me read you directly from the White House website how they interpret their budget and estimated $24 trillion debt. I've highlighted Washington's clarification in the red box. The President's 2012 budget is a responsible approach that puts the nation on a path to live within our means. Really? One must question, did they look at the numbers? And how did they arrive at that conclusion? Leaders often evade the truth when they get off course, as Washington has done with the world's largest economy. As the Italian cruise ship Costa Concordia was sinking, passengers were told to go back to their rooms, while the crew repaired an electrical problem. The captain didn't even give an order to evacuate until 70 minutes after the ship struck the rock. As passengers were evacuating and bodies were found floating near the ship, Italian port authorities were aghast when the captain told them he was conducting the evacuation from the safety of a lifeboat. As our nation is sinking, we cannot trust our leaders to save us or even warn us. Washington is eluding reality by asserting they have put our nation on a path to live within our means while producing a budget that will spend $24 trillion more than they have. These masterminds are borrowing every dollar to operate our government. Like Greece and Italy, the United States debt exceeds 100% of GDP. Other nations will soon stop financing our debt, as they've done in other countries. And when that day comes, our nation will default. The financial markets will follow, and we all go down with the ship. To rescue the United States, Americans must be told the truth and elect leaders who will honestly put us on a path of financial solvency. We must get involved in helping Americans understand the crisis that Washington is ignoring. Now that you know, get involved and let America know the real truth. Americans make reasonable decisions when they know the truth. Vote for those who reveal rather than conceal the truth. Inform everyone you know. And email this link to your friends and family.